11 Russian and Chinese naval destroyers and corvettes sailed through the waters of Alaska, our state Alaska, just this past week. It's just been revealed by U.S. Senators Dan Sullivan and Lisa Murkowski, Republican senators from the state of Alaska. These ships went through the Aleutian Islands, which are part of the state of Alaska. Now, they were met with a forceful response by 4 U.S. destroyers. I say forceful because Dan Sullivan complained that last year we sent just 2 or 3 Coast Guard ships up there to respond when some of these naval vessels from China and Russia went through. So this is a bigger response than we gave them. But come on, guys, 4 destroyers against 11. I don't think that's a good match, guys. See, the problem is this. We do not actually have a naval base in Alaska. Alaska, let me show you this, guys. I just got to show you Alaska. Hang on, guys, so you can see what we're talking about here, the scale of it. This is Alaska. Alaska has more coastline than the entire rest of the United States combined, and that includes Great Lakes coastline. There is more coastline in the state of Alaska alone than all the rest of the United States, including the Great Lakes. Guys, Alaska is huge. If just the land area alone, it's spread out. If Alaska used to cover 4 time zones, they combined it just because they wanted it to be in one state. But Alaska covers an enormous area. Alaska is in a very strategic area for the United States, being close to the poles, closest to Russia, closest to China of any state, because Russia's right here. We got big and little Diomede over here, which are like 50 miles apart. You can actually see one from the other. But this is the Attu Island right here. This is American soil. This is part of the United States state right here. And we fought a war for this island 80 years ago in 1943 because it was the only U.S. land ever occupied in this century by a foreign country. Japan took 2 of our islands and occupied them, and we fought what was called a 1,000-mile war to take this back from Japan, and we won. But guys, that was a hard fought for island, and it took a lot of American blood, and also Japan lost quite a bit there too. So my friends, this is something we followed. In fact, the oldest video of me on YouTube made 30 years ago in a couple of months, I was actually talking about that battle. I'll show you that to the end of this video if you hang on. Me 30 years ago at the opening talk for the 1993 International Space Development Conference, which I chaired in Huntsville, Alabama. Anyway, so guys, no naval bases. The most coastline and no naval bases. There's 3 little Coast Guard bases. I'll show you that in a little bit, guys. 3 Coast Guard bases. So, in fact, while we're here in Google Earth, I'm going to show you some things. So this is the islands in the southeastern Alaska. The state capital is way down here. And I used to be up here. I was stationed at Fort Greely, Alaska from 1981, April the 1st, 1981 to April 23rd, 1983. So I've lived 2 years in the Great Land. This is known as the Great Land. The land area of Alaska is such that if it broke up into 2 states, Texas would be the 3rd largest state. So Alaska is huge. Now, when I lived in Alaska, it was the least populated state with a population like 250,000. Now they got over 733,500 some odd people, like 80 some from the 22 estimated census, but it's still the 3rd least unoccupied state or populous state, because Wyoming is now the least populated and Vermont is next. But this per square mile is the least populated. This is wilderness. Almost the entire state is wilderness. But in any event, we do have a few military bases up there, 3 Coast Guard bases. We have 3 Air Force bases, 2 major ones, and basically radar stations. We got some little bitty radar stations up here, and we've got 2 Army bases. Well, 3 Army bases. Fort Wainwright up here in Fairbanks. We got Fort Richardson down here. I'll show you these around Anchorage, and Fort Greely, well, out here in the wilderness. Where I was at. But in any event, guys, so this land, these are the islands that the Russian and Chinese ships were traversing. Now, there is some freedom of navigation allowed for civilian ships, but these were military ships. and they were actually inside state waters. So they weren't like they were going through the international waters. No, they were in state waters. So this excited Dan Sullivan, and he complained that the response last year was tepid. He was satisfied at least the Navy got up there and intercepted those ships. So yeah, there's a lot at stake here. You got to realize Anchorage right here back in 2020 for at least a week was the busiest airport on Earth for cargo. So it actually eclipsed LAX and Hong Kong. So it's because Alaska is a very strategic point of the globe. It's kind of a crossways for things flying over, even to northern Europe this way, and back to the south, Pacific regions. It's kind of a good halfway crossover point. It's very strategic. We got the oil pipeline coming all the way across the state of Alaska, which actually goes through Fort Greely. I've actually walked on that pipeline, which if I'd have got caught up, I would have been in trouble. So it's an interesting area, guys. Alaska is a beautiful, big, mystical land, but these islands, let's go in a little bit closer and look at these islands, and I'm going to show you Attu real quick too. These islands are huge. I mean, it's a huge chain. We got a big volcano erupting out here right now, as you might be aware of. Adak Island, see, that was part of the battle. Attu Station over here. So these are all very critical islands through here. So I'll show you some. Let's go look here and look at Attu Station. Yeah, the Japanese were on Attu, so this gets over close to Russia, and on Adak. This island don't have a lot on it. There's a so-called Attu Station. Real fast, because we're going to show you where those ships came from too, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but I just want to show you this while we're here in Google Earth. Peaceful River. Well, it wasn't too peaceful back in 1943. Kingfisher Creek. Let's see if this, you see, there's not a lot here. This is about the only living quarters on the island today. There's some probably tankers. There's an aircraft out here. Probably a warehouse over here. Fleet Road. You can see that this actually had more activity on it a few years ago. But here's what I find interesting. You find several of these little structures here that look like they were blown up. I'm thinking this might have been the fortifications that the Japanese built that we attacked, because these are all in ruin. Whatever they are, they're all in ruin, it looks like. It could have been something we built and just the weather got it. But I do know that the Japanese had a lot of fortifications in here, and we blew them up. So, and whatever this is, it looks blown up. Yeah, the Japanese had dug in. They had built some very strong fortifications, and we took them out. So it's kind of hard to say what all this is. Now, there's tunnels, evidence of tunnels and roads. So I expect that's probably the remnants of the Japanese occupation of the island. Well, don't hold me to that. I can't swear it for fact, but it looks highly suspicious as to what that is. I just wanted to show you that while we're in here, that we have fought here before. We have fought here before. And the same thing over here on Adak Island, Atka Island. Anyway, guys, so there you are. These are our islands right here. This is part of the United States of America. It is part of a U.S. state. Of course, this is the peninsula leading down the islands. The peninsula ends right here. So there you go, my friends. Alaska, the great land. Oh yeah, and the ships came out of Vladivostok, which is part of Russia, which is right here. Let me get this thing pointed north again. So Vladivostok is right in this area. Russia took this from China a long time ago, and China wants it back. So that's what Russia's got to worry about. There's a lot of Russians live in Vladivostok now. There's a strong Russian population in Vladivostok. The ships left here on the 27th of July. That's when the flotilla left Vladivostok. You can see they got quite a naval base in here. See, this guy's quite a naval base right here. Russia's got quite a Pacific fleet, and it's right here. This is probably their best fleet. See all these warships? Russia has way more warships here than Alaska has. In fact, Alaska don't have any. In fact, Dan Sullivan was complaining that Russia has 54 icebreakers that are operational, several of them nuclear powered. The U.S. only has 2, and one of them are inoperable. The Arctic region will be crucial for the resources in the future. Both China and Russia are intensely interested in taking the and controlling the Arctic regions. Well, we got a lot at stake there in Alaska and the Arctic regions. I don't know if it was weird there with that bridge. This is a large base. Got all kind of naval ships, cargo ships, it looks like. Cargo ships. Yeah, this is a huge, huge base here. Nothing trivial in this base. I've got nothing like this in Alaska. Now, look at all these ships, guys. Serious. This is what Dan Sullivan's worried about right here. All kind of ships. All kind of rail lines and warehouses to support these ships here. This is a huge naval base, the likes of which we don't have anything to compare in Alaska. So one of the things Dan Sullivan's hoping is he can prevail upon the Department of Defense to put a naval base in Alaska. Like I said, it's very strategic. It controls our access to the Arctic. It's the only Arctic sea that the United States has. It's rich in resources. It's American citizens there. We've got it's the closest to Russia, the closest to China. You might think down here is, but not really. If you cut right across, Alaska's closer to China. China is just right over here, guys. So Alaska is actually closer to Russia and China and Alaska has our anti-ballistic missile base up here at Fort Greely. It's got our early warning systems to know if Russia is launching on us or China or North Korea. So, and its anti-ballistic missile base was really just skilled to be able to take on North Korean missiles, not the entire fleet from Russia. But we definitely know a Russian launch from our tracking stations in Canada and Alaska. It's not the old Dude line. They've redone it. This is now it's the northern, what's the name of that thing? I know the name of it. It's the, oh shoot, what is the name of that place? It's the North Warning System. Yeah, North Warning System is what we call it now. It's not the old Dew line. They decommissioned the Dew line in 1983 and put in the North Warning System, which allowed them to close down several of the old Dew bases. Those old radar bases are very remote. They're tiny, remote bases in the middle of the howling, rough Arctic wilderness. So you can't blame them for wanting to automate and modernize that stuff, guys. But in any event, so let me stop the share here. Ding, 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 ding. Stop share. Halo. So let's talk about this just a little bit. The situation is that Dan Sullivan, he said, this is a stark reminder of Alaska's proximity to both China and Russia, as well as the essential role our state plays in national defense and territorial sovereignty. Incursions like this are why we're working so hard to secure funding and resources to expand our military's capacity and capabilities in Alaska, and why our colleagues must join in supporting these investments. You know, I agree with him on that. He said that there has also been information released on the identities of the 11 ships. The 11 ship is possibly Russian Navy ship operating these waters through it. Could also be the planned ship. I'll actually get some Navy names of some of these ships now I've seen. The incursions by 11 Chinese and Russian warships operating together off the coast of Alaska is yet another reminder that we entered into a new era of authoritarian aggression led by the dictators in Beijing and Moscow, Sullivan said in this statement. That's not me talking, that's Senator Sullivan. But he said, in recognition of this reality in our state's unrivaled strategic location, for years I've been pressing the Navy and each successive administration to commit to a greater Naval, Coast Guard, and Marine Corps presence in Alaska. Now, one of those Coast Guard bases is a Marine operated Coast Guard base, so it's got the Marine involvement in it. But anyway, he said, last summer, the Chinese and Russian navies conducted similar operations off the coast of Alaska, given that our response was tepid. I strongly encourage senior military leaders to be ready with a much more robust response, such as another joint, should such another joint Chinese-Russian naval operation occur off our coast. And he says, for this reason, I was heartened to see this latest incursion was met with 4 U.S. Navy destroyers, which sent a strong message to Xi Jinping and Putin that the United States will not hesitate to protect and defend our vital interest in Alaska. Now, guys, like I said, 4 ships against 11. He called it robust because it was better than having some Coast Guard ships up there, ships that were meant to interdict drug operations and things like that. So it's pretty sad when you compare what happened versus what their capabilities actually were. So I am going to do another share here. Hang on, guys. We're going to show you some of the articles where this came up, where you can find some more stuff on it. Share screen again. Ding, 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 bing, bing, bing. Okay. One of the places where this came. Let me broaden this out a little bit here. Let's see it a little better. Russian Chinese warships operating in Alaska. There was 11. Apparently, this is some of the ships that were there. These are pretty substantial ships, guys. Pretty substantial ships. So this is in U.S. NI News, U.S. Navy Intelligence, I guess. I forget what that stands for, but anyway, I've showed their website in several of my other videos. I've been here before. This also come up in this Alaska News Source article. Look at these mountains up here. This is Alaska, guys. This is the way Alaska looks. Alaska Range. It is mystical. The mountains up there, it's like all peak, almost from the base up. The mountains up there are they're real mystical looking. There's nothing in the Rockies that compares to what you see in the Alaska Range. These are real mountains. when in the Rockies, they say, well, we got a 14,000 foot peak. Yeah, but it starts at a mile high. These go almost from sea level to 14,000 feet. These are huge mountains. They're beautiful, though. All right. And Fox News said that it triggered a forceful U.S. response. Well, I guess they were quoting Dan Sullivan. But 4 ships against 11, I think that lacks the word forceful in my estimation. You tell me what you think. Highly provocative for the New York Post. Yeah, it was highly provocative. All right, guys, here it is. These are the bases in Alaska. So I can get this to blow up. Nah, Google Maps can't find. Okay, get that off. I'll just have to talk to you for developmental purposes only. Can I zoom in a little bit here? Okay. So, all right. These 3 are your Coast Guard bases. Juneau, down here in Valdez area, Fort Valdez, where we have the oil pipeline coming out. And over here, I guess this is what, Kodiak Island. I have to go zoom in to get that. But anyway, up here we got Fort Greely, Fort Wainwright. This is Eielson Air Force Base. This is Clear Air Force Base, which is a radar center. And down here we've got the orange should be Eielson. No, excuse me. This is Eielson up here, Air Force Base. This is Elmendorf Air Force Base, and Fort Richardson is the green little balloon behind it. It's kind of hidden there. So to kind of give you a little better indication here, Eielson Air Force Base is mainly for training. We got some fighter jets up there that can intercept Russian Bear bombers and things like that. That's their primary mission. That is not Eielson. Eielson don't have mountains like that. They're off somewhere else. That's maybe around Fort Greely. Or they may be down around Denali. They're flying around Alaska somewhere. Elmendorf Air Force Base. That's the one. Yeah, I've seen C-5s, huge aircraft, and I've been down at Elmendorf. I've been by Eielson. I've flown out of Elmendorf to Travis Air Force Base when I first left Alaska on my way back to get my wife and son. This is the Clear Station, which is Denali Borough. Alaska don't have counties; they have boroughs. This is this sign for Fort Richardson. This is the biggest Army base in Alaska, down near Anchorage. And they say it has a network hub of a network includes Fort Greely and Fort Wainwright. Now, in here, they refer to Fort Wainwright as a camp. Complimentary camp to Fairbanks. So I guess it's not that big. I've been on Fort Wainwright. I stayed there my first night in Alaska, actually. Fort Greely has 461 individuals there, or not more than 461. Well, I don't know. We used to have wives and kids there. Does that include wives and kids? I used to say you could draw a circle around a 100-mile circle around Fort Greely and only be 2,000 people in it, civilians and kids and wives and everybody, including the local towns. Yeah, we never had that many people up there. You do have some beautiful mountain views there. That's not facing a beautiful mountain view for some reason. I don't know why. Now they talk like it's the smallest base and like Richardson's the largest base. Well, now in terms of population, that may be. Richardson will have the most. But actually the largest base, the largest Army base in the world is Fort Greely. It's just nobody there. We do have a missile defense system there. We had our Cold Regions Test Center, Northern Warfare Training Center there. So Alaska is very critical to our defense, and yet there's not much in the way of defense up there. In fact, when I was there, I saw all the nugs, if you know what I'm talking about on my channel. If you don't, flip that word around if you're new. The civilians were better armed than we were by a long shot. I figured if the Ruskies came over, it would be the civilians defending the Army. I was very happy for the Second Amendment, because that's who I figured our main line of defense in Alaska would be the civilians. This is a little Coast Guard base. They say they're really nothing. The Coast Guard bases are just tiny little bases, guys. There's nothing to them, nothing at all. Well, there's something, but they're not a naval base. That's my point in that. So, yeah, here's your North Warning System. It's kind of the map that it covers. I think there's 15 bases on the North Warning System. Most of them are in Canada. There used to be 30 some odd bases. This is where each base is. There used to be 30 some odd bases back in the Dew Line days. We do have some bases in Greenland too, by the way. Camp Thule. Yeah, here's a picture of one. Imagine you're out in the Howland Arctic, and that's your whole base. There's nothing for hundreds of miles around you. Wilderness. You in the wilderness. That's it, guys. Can you imagine being stationed on one of those bases? Anyway, just for cheers, guys. And in here I am. This is me. And Memorial Day weekend on 1993, May, probably the 30th, 31st, whatever that Friday or Thursday or Friday was, when I opened the International Space Development Conference that I chaired. This is on a buddy of mine's website here. It's called Space Activist Archive. There's a bunch of old videos from the ISDCs, and I'm in several of them. But this one is the oldest one, and I happen to be talking about that 1,000-mile war in this video. Check this out. Let me open this up a little bigger. Here we are.
This time, actually 50 years ago this weekend, American forces retook Attu Island in Alaska from the Japanese. It was the first retake of American territory during World War II. And that was often called the 1,000-mile war. It was a war fought against the elements. It was a real film.
I was looking for somebody, just saw him in the audience.
They don't have to support each other. I'm just looking right over it.
I joked about him a little bit earlier. I cut a joke about him. That's when I saw him. I kind of got excited there.
It was we fought against some really tough odds. But the thing was, we took an empty island and took back what was ours. But it was really an example of American resolve. And all through that war and several decades ensued, there are many, many examples of resolve, which we determined we were going to do something, and we just set out to do it.
There we go. You see, in that point in 1993, I felt like we did not have a lot of resolve in respect to space development. So I tied that in to the kickoff of this conference. And I'm not going to play all that right now, but just so you get an idea, I was talking about war 30 years ago. I was talking about military operations, because I've been studying this stuff since I was a kid in high school. When I was a kid in high school, my reading, when all the other kids were studying sports, I was a member of the military book club, and I was getting books on strategy and warfare and reading them. That one of the books I had was called Strategy. I had the patent papers. I had a book called Total War about World War II. Big thick books, lots of them. So that's what I was reading when I was like 14 years old. So imagine that. So I'm highly steeped in the study of these things for my entire life. This has been an area of history and strategy and military that I know shapes our civilization, and it does to this day. Unfortunately, I'm not celebrating it. I'm just saying that this is who we are and where we've been, and we're not out of this yet, unfortunately. It would be nice if we as a human species could graduate beyond our warfare capacities, but we're not there yet. So we have to prepare. We have to be ready. And that's the bottom line message I sent it to all you. That's why I'm bringing you these videos, because we're not over it. We're still in it. Human beings are the same in our core that we have always been. So it's probably the very first human walked the earth. We have technology now, but that don't really mean we're any smarter. It just means we know certain things better. Those ancient ancestors knew a whole lot about how to survive in the wilderness that they lived in, which required a lot of smarts. They had some big brain power. In fact, the Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthal man both had bigger brains than we do, and they probably used them. We are domesticated species. Domesticated livestock has smaller brains than their wild counterparts. So maybe that's why our brains are smaller. We've been domesticated by civilization. So urge you to get out in the wilderness when you can. Get your smarts about you. Practice. And practice for prepping and the bad days that may be ahead, if you can do that. I realize a lot of my viewers are a little bit out there in my spectrum of the age. I mean, it gets tougher, but do what you can. Get ready, because we have tough times ahead, guys. It looks like we're heading for war once again. And this is just one example. And one area where we're grossly underprepared is our naval capacities, especially to defend critical assets like Alaska, perhaps Hawaii, even our West Coast. As we now know, the Chinese have hacked a lot of our critical military software systems. They are into a lot of our critical infrastructure systems, hacking it. There are sleeper cells here in the United States. There is just biolabs, gosh knows what all else is here, guys. So we are facing something like we've never faced in World War II. When we fought Japan and Russia, it was all overseas. It was our, except for Attu Island, of course. But we took those. We took them back. Just like I was saying 30 years ago at the ISDC. 30 years and a few months. Anyway, yeah, I don't look too much different. Just my hair's longer. Well, my beard's not as red. My hair still is for the most part. Anyway, guys. So be serious, guys. Get ready. Check out my links below for various supplies you can get to take care of yourself. Watch my videos on how to eat free from the weeds and the trees. Go to your big box stores and get your beans and rice. Get some nugs. If you know what I'm talking about, flip the word around. If you don't, and get some kibbles to feed them. That might be a good barter. But check out my Patriot Supply. Go to prepwithgreg.com. Go to prepwithgreg.com. It'll help me help you. And check out what's there. And it's not just food. And guys, you can get meat buckets. You can get buckets of stuff that's all meat. I got one back here. It's all meat. So that's possible. I got one here. And you can get all fruit and get vegan. You know, you can dial that in. You can select stuff. Now they got specials, you know. If you're up to save money, get the specials. But there's different things there for 25-year-long storage food. So it's stuff you can bug out with real easy because of the way it's packaged, like this stuff right here. Anyway, my friends, thank you for watching. Greg out.